Hello guys, welcome back to Fall Into Tech. So in today's video, we have project 4. So basically we are building everything from the ground again, like what we did in the last 3 projects. But this time we are taking a step further. So we'll start by quickly setting up our virtual private cloud, which is the VPC, set up a public and private subnet, add the internet gateway, add our route table, network ACL, add a security group, and all those is just basically the foundational component we have covered in previous video, right? But in today's video, what we're going to add is we are adding 2 new EC2 instance. So one is going to be in the public subnet and the second one will be in the private subnet, right? So this setup will help us understand exactly how public and private resources communicate and how design, our AWS network for both access and security, right? So, if you have been following along since project 1, so this is basically the moment where it's all start coming together. And if you are just jumping in, no worries. So I will start by, building everything from the ground and then, show you how to build a secure, organized network architect in AWS, So now, before anything, we do the same thing again. We're going to go to our diagram and then I'm going to walk you through everything that we have, as I usually do. And then from there, when we're done, we're going to jump right into my AWS console and then we start building this project. I'm excited. We are moving along. We are on project 4 and I'm very excited for you guys to see exactly what I'm building. And let's get it. Okay, now what you can see here in our diagram, we are going to build everything from the ground again, like what we did last time. But only thing that's going to change today is this private EC2 here and then this public EC2. That's the only thing that we are going to change, right? So let me walk you through the diagram again so you can understand how everything connects, in the real world AWS environment. So first we have our VPC. First, let's start with the AWS Cloud region. This is the region as you can see in black. And after that, we have our VPC, which is right here. So the VPC is like your private, basketball court, or it can be your private data center in the AWS Cloud, right? It give us like a secure and isolated space where we can build our own network the way we want. So that's why we have this private subnet and then this. So now inside of our VPC, we have created 2 subnet. One is public and one is private. As you can see, we have the private subnet here and then we have a public subnet here. Okay. And then now the public subnet is connected to the internet through internet gateway. So we have this internet gateway here. So this is the way that we're gonna use basically to go through our public subnet. So now this separation is very important, to understand exactly how the internet will come, the connection, how it will come from the user here, go all the way inside of our public subnet. Okay. So with this internet gateway connected right here, so this acts like a front door. It allows resources in the public subnet to talk to outside world, how other web server can jump into our website or how other users can jump inside of our website. Okay, they go through this internet gateway right here. So now with the help of our route table right here, so we created this route table here. So basically think of this route table as like a GPS that's gonna show exactly the connection when it comes from the user, come through the internet gateway, it will land here into our route table, and route table will be used as a GPS to definitely direct them exactly how to get here. Okay, so now that's why we have our route table. So as you can see, we have 2 route table. One is public route table and one is private route table. Okay, so both of them is about inbound and outbound traffic. That's why we have them. Okay, so for the public one, which is this one right here, this one is like the internet is bound traffic through the internet gateway is gonna come here. Now for the private one is different because we didn't have internet gateway right here, so we set up as it's gonna be a private. So basically all connection here is internal traffic. Okay, so that's how I explained last time. So we have internal traffic here, right? So now when we're done with the route table, let's go ahead and then talk about the private network ACL. So we have a private network ACL here, and then we have a public network ACL here. So think of this private network ACL as like security fences. So basically, they control what kind of traffic can enter or can leave. So basically, what kind of traffic is going to be in our private or also our public. Okay, so they're the one who work as a neighborhood watch. That's what I used last time. Okay, so basically they're the one who control exactly who can come in and out. Okay, So now when we're done with those private network ACL and the public network ACL, now let's talk about the security group. We have a private security group right here. Okay, so now the security group are like bodyguard also for our instance that we have. This instance that we create, that we are going to create, this private and public security group will work as our security guard. For instance, like it has like its own security fence that gonna basically control traffic, who can reach them inside. Example, in our public EC2, for example, this one right here, if we allow SSH or like STP, while the private one only allows internal. So basically this one right here, it will allow people to use SSH to come inside, right, to connect to this one. But when it comes to this private one, we do not allow them to use SSH to come in here. Okay, but that everything is based on what kind of configuration we have with our private network ACL and then our public network ACL. Okay, so that's basically what we have there. And then within everything now, we have to set up now 2 EC2 instances. So one is going to be the public one, and then the second one is going to be the private one. So basically that's the project that we are working on today. So it's basically what we did last time, but the only thing that we add this time is like the private EC2 and then the public EC2. And then now if you need to understand this, I'm going very fast into this diagram. If you want to understand well, you can go ahead and refer to the project 1 or 2 or maybe project 3. I did explain exactly what we have. So this was just a brief explanation exactly what we have in our diagram here. The only thing that we add again is the private EC2 and then the public EC2. So now let's go ahead and jump into our AWS console, and then we're going to start the project. All right, now that we are here in our AWS console, let's go ahead and create our VPC. And it should be a quick one because we already, talk about it and we already did in the previous video. Okay. So now what you want to do, you want to come here. After you type here VPC, you want to come here where you say VPC, or you can click on your VPC here. Okay. And then now when you click on VPC here, what you want to do, as you can see, you will find the default one, but don't worry about it. You want to come here and then click on create VPC. Okay. And as default, you're going to leave the VPC only here. And then now you want to give it a name. Okay. So for example, mine, the first name will be FIT4 into tech VPC. That's going to be the IPv4 side manual input. So it's going to be here. Let's use as 10.0.0.6. Okay, so it's going to be 10.0.0.0.16. Okay, that's what we need here. So now, and after that, the rest you can leave it as default. Okay, so after you choose the IPv4 side block, and you want to make sure that the reason why we have here 10.0.0.0 and then /16. So this block gives us a large IP address that we need. The IP is identify the IP range that we can have, right? So with the /16, we have over 65,000 IP addresses, which is useful for like dividing, into subnets if you want to have a lot of subnets. So that's the reason why we use this one right here, 10.0.0.16. Okay. So now the rest we can leave it as default, and then we don't have to touch it. And then you want to go ahead and then click on create, and there you go. So now as you can see, we have our VPC is created. Okay, so now after we create the VPC, the next step is we want to create our public subnet. And to create our public subnet, you want to come here where it says subnet. You click on here subnet and just give it a time, subnet here. And now again you will find default here, and I already give explanation why we have this default. Don't worry about it. And you want to go ahead and then click on create subnet. Okay, so now when you create a subnet, you want to make sure that your subnet it is attached to a VPC that you already have. So what to do that, you want to come here, click on this one, and then select the VPC that you want to attach this sub to, right? So we have our Fall Into Tech VPC. Then you click that, and then here you want to give it a name. So for example here, the first one this one is public, so the name would be FIT Fall Into Tech public subnet. Okay, that's good for now. And then the zone, we can choose anything that we want. We can choose the first one right here. And then now here, as you can see, we have the IPv4 side block started with 10.0.0.0/16. Okay, it started here, right? So now the one that we gonna use is gonna be 10.0.0.0/24. Okay, so we're gonna use the 24. Okay, so we started with the 16, now we're gonna use the 24. So basically the 24 give you 256 IP addresses, so that one is like perfect for single subnet. So basically as you choose bigger number, you have less IP addresses. Okay, So now that's the reason why we choose the 24. And then if you need more explanation, we already talked about this, and then you can go back into the previous project and we'll explain it exactly. It will give you more detail. And then from here, we are done. We want to click on create subnet. And there you go. As you can see, we have our subnet is live. So the subnet is there. Okay, here, one thing we want to double check, make sure that our subnet, it is attached to our VPC. We can go here, click on action, and you want to select your VPC first, and then go to action here and click on edit subnet. And then now you want to click on auto assign IP settings. So basically what you want to do here is, like, for example, when you create your subnet, you want to make sure that any resources that you have inside of your VPC, they can automatically have their own IP addresses instead of waiting for you to go and then do manually assign them IP addresses. But if you enable this one right here, the auto assign IP setting, you will definitely give them access to have IP addresses automatically. Okay, so now you want to go ahead and then click on save, and then that one is done. So now let's move into the next one. So now what we want to do next is we want to go ahead and then create our internet gateway. So again, the internet gateway, it is like the door that anything outside of our VPC will use to get inside of our VPC. And then if we set up the settings properly, anything inside of our VPC want to leave our VPC, go outside the world. That's the way that they will go. Okay, so now let's go ahead and create our internet gateway. So you want to go ahead and click on internet gateway here, and you will find a default one. You don't have to worry about it. And then you want to click on where they say create internet gateway. Okay, so now here you want to give it a name. So for example, my name would be FIT Fall Into Tech, the internet gateway. And then now that's the only thing that we want to do. And then we want to click create internet gateway. Okay, so now that your internet gateway is created, as you can see here, we want to make sure to attach this internet gateway to the VPC that we have. And to do that, you want to come here where you say action, click on action, and then click on attach. As you can see here where you say attach VPC, so you click on attach VPC, and then now you should be able to see the VPC that you created, which is this one. You click on that and then click attach internet gateway. Okay, so now that's done. So we have our VPC, we created our subnet, and then we create our internet gateway, and we did attach the internet gateway to our VPC. Okay, so now what we want to do now, we want to go ahead where it say we want to create our route table. Okay, and to do that, you want to come here where it say route table, and then you click. As you can see, you will find a default one here. So now here, instead of creating a route table, we already have two that were created, but the first one was the default that AWS had created for us. But the second one is coming based on our VPC that we created. Okay, so now if you select them and then come here where it say route, you will be able to see them. Okay, so this is a destination is right here, and then the local. So we don't have to worry about the first one, but the second one, that what we need right here. As you can see, this is the one that come from our VPC that we create. So now what we want to do first is we want to rename it here and then give it a name. So the name will be FIT Fall Into Tech Public Route Table RT. Okay, that's going to be the name of our route table right here. Okay, so now as that we have that route table is there, and we didn't need to create it, we just needed to edit that route table. Okay, so now what you want to do here, when you click here into the route table, and then as you can see, we have the destination here. And then the target, what we want to do, we want to add another route table. And to do that, you want to come here where you say edit route table, and you click on it. Now, the next step will be to click add route table. And then now here, you want to give it to 0 here. And then here, it has to be from like the internet gateway. And we need to choose our internet gateway that we just created, which is this one right here. And then you choose that. Okay. And when you choose that, next thing is like to click on save. Okay. So now our route table is created. Okay. So let me just give a little bit explanation here. Now, the default route table that we found there, it started with the 10.0.0.0/16, and the location is local, is for the internet VPC traffic that we have there. So the new route table that we created right now is allow our instance that we have the subnet to have access to the internet. So for example, now this is allowing our resources to be able to get out of our VPC and then to go outside our VPC internet. So to do that, they need to use this route table that's going to be as like our GPS, and then help them get out our VPC. Okay, so that's why we have that route table here. So now that we're done with the route table, the next step is like we want to associate this route table with, for example, the public subnet that we have, okay? And then to do that, we want to come here where it says association of subnet association here. So now that's what we want to do. And then when we come here, the next step is like to edit this subnet association that we have. All right. So now you come here and click edit subnet association. And then now, as you can see, we found right here, you're going to select it. And then after you select it, you want to go ahead and then click save on save association. Okay. So now we did associate our route table with the subnet that we have. That was the next step that we needed. Okay. And then now the next step that we need is to create our security group. And then all these different setup that I'm doing, I already did a lot of explanation into our previous project. So if I'm going fast or you need more explanation, you can go ahead and then start from project 1, 2, 3, and now you'll be able to have more explanation exactly on what we're doing here. So now the next rule that what we don't want to set up is we want to set up our security group. And to do that, you want to come here where it says security group, you click on that. And then as you can see, you will find default security group here, but don't worry about it. So now what we want to do, we want to go ahead and then create our security group here. And then you want to come here and then click where it says create security group. And then now you want to give it the name here. Okay. And then the name that we have is going to be FIT fall into group, security group. Okay. So that's the name that we have. And then here, the description that we want to give is a security group for the FIT VPC public subnet. So basically, it's going to be the security group that will, for example, make sure that our VPC our public subnet have some setup like what we want them to have here. So basically, that's the description that we have. So as you can see, the security group for the into tech VPC public subnet. So that's what we're setting here. Okay. So now, as you can see, there is a default here. So we want to change it to our VPC that we need, which is this one right here. And now we have the first step. Okay. So the next step is we want to add inbound rule. And then the inbound rule that we want to add is going to be add rule. You want to click on add rule. And when you click on add rule, it's going to ask you what type of rule that you want to add. So it's going to be HTTP right here. So it's going to be HTTP, okay? So, and then the port that we need, but the protocol is going to be TCP, and then the port range is going to be 80. And then now the source, when it comes to source, we want to choose anywhere IPv4, okay? So now basically that's what we need there. And then as you can see, we have that set up. All right, so that's the only thing that we need. The outbound rule, we're going to leave it as default. We don't have to change anything. And then now what we want to do here, we want to go ahead and then click on create security group. Okay. So now we have that done. So again, we have our VPC, our subnet, our route table, our internet gateway, and then we did set up our security group. So now the next step will be to set up our network ACL. And to do that, you want to come here where it say network ACL, and then you will find the default here and you don't have to worry about it. Let's go ahead and create our default, not the default, but let's go ahead and create our new network ACL. Right now here, instead of creating a new network ACL, you will able to see that AWS already created a default network ACL for you after you create your VPC. So if you come here in this one, the first one that you find here, if you go all the way down, you'll be able to see that this one is connected to your VPC, which is fall into tech VPC. And then there is the rule, the inbound, and then the outbound rules. So now what we want to do here, the only thing that we need here is just to rename this network ACL, and then we can name it FIT network ACL. Okay, and then click on save. And then now basically that's what we need to do here. We don't need to do anything else, but we can double check here, see exactly the rules that we have here. So if you click on inbound rules and you come here, as you will see the inbound rules, the network ACL that we have already allow all traffic, as you can see right here. And then now if you go to outbound also, so allow all traffic. So that's basically what we need here. So we don't need to change anything. I'm fine with this. And then I already did a deep explanation on these rules on our project 3. And if you have any question, you can refer to those projects to be able to understand exactly the rules that we're creating here. Okay. All right, we're back here. So now, as you can see, internet gateway, we did create the ACL. We did create the security group right here, which is the public security group. Okay. So now the only thing that we have left is the EC2, the public EC2. So now we're going to leave it as it is for now, and then create a private route table, a private network, and then private security group. Okay. And then when we're done, we're going to create a private EC2. All right, let's go back to our console and then finish up there. All right, so now to create our private subnet, we want to come here where it says subnet right here. And then now we can click on create subnet. Okay, so when you click on create subnet, you want to choose a VPC because we already have the VPC. Now we're creating this private subnet. We already created the public one. So this is the private subnet, but still the private subnet is inside of our VPC. So as you remember, when I use basketball as analogy, so this is a private gym that the public doesn't have access to it. Only players and coaches have access to this gym right here. So now we want to choose the public VP, the fall into tech VPC right here. That's what we want to choose. And then now we want to give it a name. So it's going to be FIT fall into tech private subnet. Okay. And then now the availability zone, we can choose a second one just to be, diverse. Okay. So now here we're going to change a little bit. So it's going to be 10.1.0.24. Okay. And that also gives us 456 IP addresses. Okay. And then I already did a lot of explanation when it comes to this also. And if you need more info, you can refer to the previous project and to understand exactly this here. So our IPv4 CIDR block is started with 10.0.0.0/16, and then we have here 10.0.1.0.24 because we have to change it, to be able to generate more IP addresses that is different. So if you leave it as 0, here it's not going to work. Okay. So now what we want to do, we want to go ahead and then click on create subnet. Boom. So now we have private subnet is up. Okay. So here it was recording and somehow my recording device that I'm using, it was not showing exactly what I was building. But let me go back a little bit. So we were building a private route table. Okay. As you can see, this is the private route table built. Let me just kind of change it. So it's going to be private route table. Okay. So it's going to be fall into tech private route table. And when you build this route table here, like how we build the public one, is same thing that you're going to build a private one. But when you build a private one, the next thing is same thing again. You want to select this one and come to subnet association. And then now you're going to come here. You want to come here and then click on edit subnet association and then select this private subnet right here and save the association, like the same thing that we did last time. Okay. So now we already built the private subnet, and then now we build the private route table. Okay, so now let's move into the next step. All right, so now that we are done with our security group, we want to go ahead and then create our next step. It will be the network ACL. And then here, if you come here where it says network ACL here, you click on your network ACL, you will see that we already created our public network ACL here. And as now, if you click on here, you see that we have two subnets that are connected to our network ACL. And if you click it, you see that our private network ACL is connected here. And then our public subnet network ACL, it is also connected here. So they both connected to this network ACL, right? But if we look at the rules here, it said that it's going to allow all traffic through all protocol and all port range is allowed right here. Let me move a little bit so you guys can see here. Okay. Yeah, it is allowed here, as you can see. And then when it comes to outbound, also exactly the same thing is allowed here. And remember, we don't need that. We need to create a new ACL that will protect our private subnet, that we wouldn't let traffic coming out or going out of this VPC. Okay. So now to do that, we need to go ahead and then create a new network ACL. And then let me uncheck here and then click on create network ACL and then give it the name. So it's going to be FIT private network ACL. And then here, let's select our VPC. It's going to be building this VPC right here. And then now we can go ahead and then create it. Okay. Now click on create. Okay. So now give it time. There you go. As you can see, we have our private network ACL here. And then if we refresh it here, the private one here, so it's not associated. It actually is right here. But we can go ahead and then, okay, it's not associated. Let's just check. And let's go action here. Let's go to, let's see, rules, outbound rules. Okay, the inbound is denying here. And then the outbound also is denied here. That's what we need for this network. Okay, so now what we need to do is just to kind of associate this network as ACL with our private subnet. Okay, and then to make the association happen, you gotta select the private network ACL here. Again, come to subnet association and then come down here. Right. So now here, what we want to do, we want to make sure that our network, the private network ACL that we create here, is associated with our private subnet. Okay, and to do that, you want to select the private network ACL here, and then come to where it says edit association right here, and then now you select the private subnet, and then you click on save changes. There you go. As you can see here, we have our private network ACL associated with our private subnet, and then we have our public network ACL associated with our public subnet right here. Okay, so now that step is done. Let's move into the next one. All right, now that we're not going to create a private security group just for now, because we will have another way to create it later during the project. Okay, so now here, this is where the project first starts. So here, what we want to do, we want to go ahead and create our server. So it's going to be our EC2 instance. So now you want to come here and then type EC2 and then click on EC2 here. And as you can here, you want to go click on instance here, and then now launch instance, and then now this is going to be our first server EC2 that we're going to create here. Okay. Now that we are here in our EC2 instance, what we want to do first is just to understand exactly what we have here. So basically, EC2 instance for, let's say, compute cloud. It's basically a virtual server running in the cloud. So think of EC2 instance as like a computer, but instead of sitting it next to you, like on your desk, it is running inside of AWS global infrastructure. Okay, so it gives you the power to basically host application, run code, and then perform tasks that you would like, just as like it was a regular computer. Okay, so that's why they're saying the cloud is very flexible, because you have the option to create those. Okay, why do we create EC2 instance in this project? So we need an EC2 instance in this project because it's just how we test our network setup. And we will launch like one instance in the public subnet so we can connect to the internet. Then we will create an EC2 a private one into our private subnet. Well, just make sure that we test communication in both of them. Okay, make sure that they both can communicate. Okay, and then as you can see here, we have our title, and we can name it as FIT server. Okay, so it's gonna be the name that we choose here. And then now, here, when you come here, you want to make sure to choose this one right here. Make sure it's in the free tiers, the Amazon Linux 2023 kernel /6.1. So this one is in the free tier, so you don't have to pay anything. Okay, so that's what we're going to choose. Then now here, as the architecture here, we can leave it as it is. We don't have to worry about it. The instance type. Okay, so to understand the instance type, just basically when you buy a laptop, they always give you this description of the laptop, how many giga it has, how many the memory, and all this kind of stuff. So this is basically all those information here. So now we're gonna create a key pair, but eventually we're not gonna need for this project. But it's just we're learning a way of exactly how to create a key pair. So to create a new key pair, you go ahead and click create new pair, new key pair, and then give it a name. It can be so called a key pair. Okay, and then now you can go ahead and this here give you, for example, the format that the key pair will be. So we can use it as default, and hopefully if we need it, we're going to use it as like the OpenSSH. Okay, so click on create key pair, and as you can see, the key pair will be downloaded on your laptop. Okay, and then now here, when you come to the network, as you can see, AWS give you the default network here. So now we're going to change it a little bit because we already have the VPC that we're going to use. So now you want to come here and then click on edit, and then here, as you can see, the default, you want to jump and then choose this VPC that we created, which is for Intotech VPC. So you want to select that one, and then now as you have that one here, we want to select an existing security group, which is our security group that we created. And as you can see, this is our security group here, so we can choose that. Okay, and here we can just enable the assign public IP that we already did it here, but we just want to allow it here. And then now as a configuration, the storage 1 GB is fine and everything looks good. And then now let's go ahead and create our first server. So it's going to be for Intotech server. So now you can come here and then click on launch instance and then give it a time, and boom, we already have our first instance created. Let's refresh here. There you go. So we have our first server here created, and then it is running. You have the IP address here, and then we have all this basic information. And then I will walk you through this information a little bit. Right. As now that we already have our first instance here, now let's go ahead and see what we have inside. If you select here and then come down, you can move this one all the way up here, and then we have all the details that we need here. We have, you see that is IPv4 address here. And then now let's go to network, and then as you click on network, you will see the VPC ID, which is the VPC that we created, is linked to this one right here. And then the subnet, we have our private subnet here that is linked to this instance that we just created. The availability zone is right there. We have our IPv4 address, and then we have our IPv4 address also here. And also we did set up the automatic assigning IP address, so that's why we have this one here. And this is all the information that our network gave us. And then when it comes to security right here, we have our security group that we attach to this one. So we have it here. We don't have to worry about anything else. That one is there. And then here, this is just the monitoring or exactly how we use our instance. Okay. And then now I think that's all we need here. Now we can go ahead and go into the next step from here. Okay, now that we are done with the public one, it's time to launch our private EC2 instance. We already launched the public one, which was in our public subnet. And then now it's time to launch the private one, which is going to be in our private subnet. Okay, now it's time to launch our second private server. So here, as we're still here in our instance, what we want to do is want to go ahead and click on launch instance here. And then now the name will be for into tech, for into tech private, private server. Okay, so it's going to be for into tech private server. And then hold on, let me change here a little bit. So it's going to be for into tech private server. Okay, so for into tech private server right here. And then when it comes to the Amazon machine image, we're going to leave it as the default right here. And then we don't have to change anything else here. The architect is fine. Instance type also is fine. We want to stay with the free tiers. And then here, instead of creating new pair, let's use the key pair that we created, which is fall into tech key pair. So we can use that one. And then now when it comes to network here, we can edit, click on edit. And then now you remember we didn't create a private security group. So it's time to create that private security group right here. But before we get to the private security group, make sure to the network here. So we want to go ahead and then choose our VPC, because this private instance is going to be staying inside of our private subnet. So we want to make sure to choose our private subnet here. And let's see, fall into the private subnet. There you go. We have it here. And then now the security group here, instead of selecting existing one, we want to create a security group. Okay. So now the security group, you're going to change this name, the default, and add ours. So it's going to be fall into tech. Let's see, private, if I can spell right, it's gonna be private security group, okay. All right, fall into tech private security group. And then now the description, we can give a description here, and the description will be a private security group. Okay, so it's gonna be a private, let's see, machine is slow today. Let me clean. There you go. So it's gonna be private security groups going to tech. That's gonna be the description right there. Okay. So we can use that description private. Hold on. Let me just. Okay. A private security group for into tech. All right. So that's gonna be the description that we need. And then now let's go ahead and then talk about the inbound and then the outbound rules here. All right. As you can see here, we have the default inbound security group rules, and then now the type is SSH and the protocol TCP, and then port range is 22. This is some basic understanding of networking when it comes to networking and stuff like that. So it's very important to understand them exactly. SSH is mainly used, for example, if developers want to have access to this instance, they can use the SSH to log into this instance from their computer to another like remote desktop. If they wanted to use something, go use another laptop to have access to this instance right here. But if you shut down this port, they were not able to do it. But opening this port right here allow them to be able to SSH into this. It's very important to understand how SSH works. If you go to my YouTube channel, I have some previous projects that talk about SSH. If not, you can also look it up and understand exactly the SSH. If you don't understand about protocol, you can read that or learn about it, and then port range and stuff like that. So we have that one set up, and we don't need to change it. All right. So now when it comes to this one right here, I already talked about SSH. And then here, if you look, for example, here we have that source type that telling us that anywhere. So even any access, for example, anywhere from the internet can have access to a private instance that we create, our private server. And that's not the case that we want, because this one is going to locate it inside of our private subnet. So we don't want that. And then now what we want to do, we want to change this setup right here. And we still want to allow the SSH. Okay. And then now we want to come here where it says source type. You click on that and then click on custom. And when you have the custom, the source type here, you want to change it up. And then if you look down here, you will find your security group that you created for the private subnet. Okay, you select that one, and then if you select that one, now it's more safer because you already have set up a configuration where only people who are inside or only resources who are inside of our private subnet will have access to SSH inside of our private server that we create, because this is going to in our private subnet, so we don't need to open up for anyone else. Okay, so that's basically all we need here. And then now we have everything set up. What we want to do, we want to go ahead and then click on create launch instance, and this one right here is going to launch our, let's see, the source. Okay, looks like it didn't go through. You have to choose security group right here. Okay, so we have that, and let's launch again, launch, and see what we got. There you go. And then just put it in. Now it's launching our private server. There you go. So now we have our private server. So let's refresh here. We should be able to have two. There you go. We have our private server and then the public. We can go ahead and rename this one as, let's see, you can just name it our public server. So we have the public server, we have the private service right here, and then we have the public server right here. And both of them, they are running, and we were able to have addresses. So as you can see here, the first, this private one, we did not allow it to have any IP address, so that's why we don't have it here. And then now this one, we have our public IPv4 here. All right, now that we have our EC2 instance created, and that was the last part of this project when we added two VPC 2 instance into our private and public subnet. Okay, so now what is another step that I want us to go into is like creating VPC in a different way. So to do that, you want to go back here where you say VPC, and then click on VPC and click on your VPC, and let's go ahead and click on create VPC. So as you can see, so before when we create VPC, we used to come here and then click on VPC only. So now there is another way where we can create this VPC. Okay, so now this way you're gonna choose VPC and more. And as you can see here, it gives you, for example, overview on exactly what you have. So this one is like a default pre here that give you how many subnet you have, 4 subnet, 4 route table, and then network connection, 2 of them. Okay, so far the way we were building it is we're building a single one. So this time we want to create like the VPC that give us a lot of option where it's come to creating different. So this one is different than what we used to do. So now this one show us a fast and more visual way to do the same thing using VPC and more option. Okay, so basically what it does is this option is useful because it gives you like a diagram where you can have an overview of like the architecture that you are building, and you see your subnet, how many subnet you have, how many route table, NAT gateway is there, and then more. And you know, this is very, very good when it comes to, this is another way where beginner can, if they want to see exactly the pieces connect together. You know, as you can see, we have the different pieces here, and you have your VPC, you have your subnet that come with it. And then if you have a green one, this is a public one, it show you your public route table, and also it show you your public network ACL also. So this one definitely give you more idea on exactly what you're building. Give you idea on more what you're building. As you can see, if you have a private one, it show you the private route table that you have, and they show you the private ACL that you have. Okay, so now that's the reason why, you know, this one is, you know, is very good, is helpful. It gives you the overview idea on exactly what are you building. Okay, so it is really good when it comes to testing and learning stuff like that. So that's the reason why you can use this one. And so basically it is more, I feel like it's more useful, I mean, than building everything manually. So this one give you the full control over the configuration that you have, and, you know, show you exactly how things are connected between them, which is very nice. Okay, so now what you want to do here is we can come here and then now name our VPC. So let's give it the name as Fall Into Tech VPC. Okay, now that's the name. All right, so as you can see here, when you put the name here, it gives you exactly the name here, the name of your VPC. It gives you the subnet that we need. So for example, we went ahead and then create this single separately. Now here it gives you the whole overview of everything instead of going and create one by one. You know, in this project, I went ahead and created everything from the ground up, right? Because it was the basic of understanding how things work. So now if you want to build it in the fastest way and then a way that is more friendly, but it's good to know how to use it, both of them. That's why I kind of ended up ending this project in this way right here, because you can see exactly the public subnet is right here. The public, this is a private subnet, this is a public subnet. So this is a different region that we have. And then the route table, as you can see, we have the public one. And then also here we have the private. So if you click on one, it gives you exactly what comes with it. Okay. So now, as you can see here, we have our rate, the name, we have the name right here, right? So we have our IPv4 CIDR block right here. And then when we're done, IPv6, we can leave it as it is. The tenancy, we can leave it as it is default. And then here, it gives you the number of availability zone. As you can see, if you want to choose 3 or if you want to choose 2, you can. And you remember, we did set up this availability zone in our past project. So now here, you can choose from here where you want to set it up. And then now we have that. And then you can add the number of public subnet if you need more than just 2. And then also you can add the number of private subnet if you need more than 2. So so far the project, we did build a private subnet and then we built a public subnet. So if you needed a 2 private subnet, 2 public subnet, you can also set it up here. And also now we can see exactly here the NAT gateway. So the NAT gateway is a little bit, it costs money to do it. That's the reason why we're not going to use it here. So basically what it does is in a private subnet send traffic through the internet. So basically that's why we have the NAT gateway here, and it costs money. So that's why we're not going to use it in this project right here. But yeah, definitely. So let's use, for example, think of a private EC2 like, for example, a play inside the local room, right? So the NAT gateway basically is like the equipment manager who goes out and grab like Gatorade and then new shoes or like bring them back to the players, but not fan can have walk in, like they cannot have access to the locker room. So basically the NAT gateway is basically that equipment manager who would be able to do all of those. Okay. So that's what we have here. And then as you can see, we have VPC endpoint. So basically the VPC endpoint allows your private resources like the EC2 that you create inside your private subnet to connect to AWS services like the S3, DynamoDB, and Secret Manager, and without using the internet. That's why the VPC endpoint is there, right? So basically, there are 2 types of there are interface endpoint and then there are gateway endpoint, And then the interface endpoint is used for services like SSM and CloudWatch, and then the gateway endpoint is used for S3 and then DynamoDB. Okay. So basically, that's what the VPC endpoint is used for, and it was definitely good to mention it here and then see it here. So basically, we don't need it for this project, so we can leave it as default. And then after verifying everything, make sure that everything looks good, you can go ahead and then click on create. And as you can see, it is creating our services that we wanted one by one, and it should be done. And then you can go ahead and then click on VPC. There you go. We have our VPC here. And then if you go back to your VPC here, you will see this is the last VPC that we created for IntuTalk VPC. And then now all those stuff that we need, the subnet, the everything is there. As you can see for IntuTalk, this is the one to create it is right here. If you go to route table and then you refresh here, you can see this is the one that we just created right now. You create a private one and then the public one route table. And if you go to network and then you refresh here, it will give you, let's see, security. We didn't add a security group on it. Let's see. Okay, so let's go back here in your VPC. Oh, so basically, so that's all we had here. If you come here, it will give you all the, the overview of exactly what we created right here. And I feel like this way is definitely faster. And then it gives you more overview, the more architect for you to understand exactly what you created. Okay. All right, guys. So this one will mark the end of this project, which was focused mainly on creating EC2 inside your private subnet and inside your public subnet. And then we did that, and then we understood how to set up a public server. And then the other part that we learned is like how to create a VPC using the VPC and more. Instead of building everything step by step, now we can go ahead and then use this one and create the VPC in a faster way, and then, make more sense for us to see what we're building. As you can see, the map is right here. All right, so thank you guys for watching, and then I can't wait to see you guys into our next project. And this one was project 4, and stay tuned for project 5 is coming.